What's the story, guys? Just doing a brief review on 28 Years Later, and like the title says, yeah, it's woke. It's such a damn shame because, I mean, the trailers for this made it look amazing and everybody's really excited for it. And the first 30 minutes or so of this film is really good and very entertaining, but then it just devolves into complete nonsense and disappears up its own arse. And the gas thing is, when I say woke, it's like 2016 woke. It's like pregnant chicks on a battlefield woke. It's bad dad trope woke. It's magical mystical feminism woke. All the stuff that they used to be slapping into the Marvel comics around the 2016-2020 period. And it just completely ruined the film. What's even worse is the stuff that's really good at the beginning, apparently that's supposed to be some condemnation of patriarchy and a lament on the devolution of society into traditional patriarchal gender roles and activities. Which is just bloody bizarre, because if there's one place that's not going to have a HR department, it's a post-apocalyptic Britain. Apparently this is all down to Danny Boyle completely losing the plot and buying into the whole Hollywood mindset. He's on record saying that if he was making Slumdog Millionaire, well, actually he wouldn't. He wouldn't be allowed to make Slumdog Millionaire at this time. Because it's the film that actually made him Oscar winner. It's the film that really elevated him in his profession. And right now he's told he shouldn't be allowed to do it because he's a white guy. Apparently that film was cultural appropriation and the only person that should be allowed to do it is an Indian. Which is absolute feckin' nonsense, because that means, by contrast, that some lad from Bangladesh shouldn't be allowed to make a gangster film from a bunch of East Enders. So if you're some Indian guy out there with a script for a Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels too, you ain't going to be allowed to make it according to Danny Boyle. But what's really frustrating is there's some really good stuff in this. The way it's shot, for instance, like apparently it's supposed to be all done on iPhones or something. I'm not 100% on that. It is digital, just like the first film. But it just looks gorgeous. Like there's some really beautiful, colourful palettes involved. Really interesting shots, directorially speaking. You see the mainland of Britain, it's like overflowing with beautiful lush green fields. Herds of, thousands of deers running in the distance. Wildflowers that have reclaimed the landscape of Britain. That all juxtaposed beautifully with like corpses coming up out of the ground to come and attack you. So while I'm sure some people have a problem with the colour saturation of that, it is a beautiful palette and it's a mark away from stuff like The Walking Dead, which is like drenched in greys and browns. And the story and the characterization for the first 40 minutes is great. Like you see Spike, who's the young child in this one, who's played by a wonderful actor, by the way. We got another Nicholas Hoult in our hand here. He's going to grow up to be a talent to watch. You see the contrast between him and his dad, because his dad still is old enough to remember the world before the virus. So he knows when he was like his age, he would be playing video games, shooting zombies, not actually being out in the fucking mainland doing it for life. And this is the part of the story that's really Spike's coming of age moment, where he's supposed to go on to the mainland for the first time, actually get his first kill of a zombie. Well, they're not zombies, they're infected, but you know what I mean? That's what they do actually call them that at some stage in it. And you actually see what they've been doing out there. Like there's a whole section that's kind of clear wood, and that's where his dad said to him, this is what you're going to be doing when you grow up. You're going to be chopping this down for fuel to bring back to the island. It's mentioned he's only 12 years of age at this stage, and you're not really meant to go there unless you're 14 or 15. And some people kind of criticise that when they're been reviewing it. But I mean, at this stage, it wasn't really meant to be a full-on mainland experience. He was really supposed to be just brought there by his dad, get his first kill and infected, which is the kind of gross, fat lads that just crawl on all fours. And he was supposed to just pick up something like a frisbee or something, bring it back to say that he was there. He certainly wasn't meant to run into an alpha. And there is some lovely poignant moments around this part. Like I said, when he sees the life this kid is going to have, at such a young age, it's basically like going back to the Middle Ages where you have to worry about things hunting you in the forest, as opposed to modern day life where you're just sitting there playing video games. Just little nods of their heads and glances from the eyes from Aaron Taylor Johnson's character to realise that what his son's life is going to be is totally different to his. And the loss of that innocence for what it's a nice theme that's in the film. And this is a good old-fashioned, masculine male role model being shown in action, with his son. And when the whole thing goes sideways and they do get attacked by an alpha, the son is sitting there beating himself up that he missed a few shots when they were in retreat. And his dad's like, no, you weren't ready for this. You did remarkably well for your first day out. He's proud of his son and how he comported himself, and it's just as much as said it to him. Like, this whole excursion is meant to be a baptism for him, and he got thrown in at the deep end and did well. So when they get back to the island and he has his welcome back Spike party afterwards, it's well deserved. Even if the event that the kid went through kind of knocked the stuffing out of him with the sheer brutality of it and he didn't really enjoy it that much. It's just at this stage you start to notice the tonal shift in the film. I get the feeling you're not meant to actually enjoy Spike's celebration party, that it's meant to be some sort of cultish display or something. And it's at this stage it all starts going downhill. Jamie, which is Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, starts riding around behind his voice back with some girl that he's with. The kid actually sees him doing this and it kind of really disgusts him. Killing Stone dead, the heroic archetypal father figure that he is from. Going so far with Spike pulling a knife on his dad the next day when he goes back to the house with the ma and telling him to get out of his own house. The ma at this stage, I should point out, has been completely off her head in some form of mental illness brought on by what we find out later on is cancer. When he was out on the mainland the previous day with his dad, they spotted a fire that was being burnt by what he was told was a GP, a former doctor who seemed to have gone mentally insane, but is still somehow managed to surviving out there on the mainland with the infected. And Spike gets into his head that he could be able to get his ma over to him, he might be able to save her life. And this is where the plot starts falling apart. He sets the local store on fire so he can sneak his mother out unnoticed. Something they never actually address at the end of the film at all, because that's pretty much all their supplies and they don't have a lot to begin with. And then we have a long trek before they get to GP. And this is where some weird stuff starts happening. For instance, through the magical power of feminism, an infected pregnant woman doesn't eat his mother as she tries to help her give birth to what turns out to be a perfectly healthy baby. This makes no sense whatsoever, particularly as the first thing that happens after the baby's given birth to is that the infected mother then tries to eat everybody, which logically speaking would include the baby too. It's just such a weird throwback to like 2016 comic book tropes of pregnant women in warfare or combat zones. I just don't get it. I mean, even the idea of the infected being able to get pregnant in the first place is weird. And it's frustrating because it's juxtaposed with other really good stuff as well. Like, for instance, they run into a French guy called Eric, who's the only member of a team that escaped off a boat that's been patrolling around Britain. And he runs into Spike and his mother and insists them on their way to the doctor. And he has a mobile phone, which is something Spike's never seen because basically everything progression in this world has stopped since about 2002 or so. So again, we get that juxtaposition when he's trying to describe what a courier is, somebody whose job it is to deliver packages. It just doesn't exist in his world. You know, like, and the idea of the internet and ordering stuff online, it's just beyond him. And there's a generally funny laugh out loud moment at this when he shows him a picture of his girlfriend on his phone, which, to be honest with you, looked more like an OnlyFans girl to me. And Spike's natural reaction is say, what's wrong with her face? She looked like that mate of mine who ate those seashells and it all blew up. Which, discussed Erickson, is a nice bit of condemnation of current Botox culture and the like. But moments like this are just few and far between, and the film just seems to meander too much before we get to the doctor, played by Ralph Fiennes, who seems to be a custodian of some sort of big bone temple. This is where we find out for certain that she's dying of cancer, there's no cure for it, and he basically tops her. With her consent, admittedly, but still. He then goes on to boil the flesh off her head, basically, gives the skull to Spike, who puts it on top of the bone column, and then he makes his way back to the island with the kid, whom he leaves at the gates and then just goes off because presumably she's so disillusioned. He leaves a letter in the cup, which his dad gets, and prompts him to kind of run out of the thing and try and find his son. And presumably that's going to be the next arc of the film, that he's going to try and track him down. And the last we see of Spike at the end is the infamous Power Ranger Jimmy Savile scene, which is just throwing a lot of people. The bookend being that Jimmy there is the Jimmy at the beginning of the film who saw his dad get tore apart by the infected in the church in Scotland, 28 years ago. And that's the end. It's just a mess. It's a real disappointment. Like I said, the first 40 minutes is great, and I have a feeling that if they had just stuck with that storyline, it would have been fine, but they just felt this need to go off on this weird, allegorical tangent. And if I had to give it a mark out of 10, I'd give it a 5. It's not terrible. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. But mother of God, one thing you do not want to do is watch 28 days later beforehand, setting yourself up for it, because you will just be starkly impressed at the difference in quality between the first film and this one. And unfortunately, I just think it comes down to politics. I don't think we live in an age anymore where a guy can save a bunch of girls for a bunch of raping soldiers. And the weird thing is, it's not even as horrific as the first one was. They just didn't seem as dangerous. The blood and gore just didn't seem as effective. You literally have the alphas in this one tearing people's spinal columns out with their heads. And it just doesn't seem as horrific as in the first film where normal people were just gouging people's eyes out while tearing their throats out with their teeth. I don't know, it's just sad. Well, let us know what you think. 28 years later, Jesus, I had the best trailer I've ever seen to begin with, and it just ended up a pretty mediocre film. It's got some nice moments, it's got some lovely cinematography, but besides that, just a real letdown. Let us know what you think, guys. All right, take care. Bye.